This is it's a joint meeting of the Board of City Commissioners and the County Commission. This is what would normally be our regular monthly joint committees meeting. And before we get started, I will ask Whitney to call roll, to call the meeting to order. She has offered to take roll for both commissions. Whitney?
Mayor Schmitz?
Here.
Commissioner Cleary?
Here.
Commissioner Zanker?
Here.
Commissioner Risch?
Here.
Commissioner Connolly?
Here.
Chair Bittner?
Here.
Commissioner Bakken?
Here.
Commissioner Munson?
Here.
Commissioner Schwab?
Here.
Commissioner Woodcox?
Here.
All right, so we have an agenda that was published. The agenda is going to start out with a presentation on the extraterritorial area, or the ETA, which is why we're here today. After that presentation, we'll take public comment. So we
Pledge allegiance. Or don't we do that at these meetings?
we have not historically done it. We have not been doing that. I mean, we can do it, but we should have done it before we called it to order. So we're going to receive a presentation. Then after that, we'll have public comment and then discussion to whatever other topics and what directions we'll take from here. So thank everyone for being in attendance. I do want to let everybody know that the meeting is being run live right now on Dakota Media Access, but at 5:30, it will cut off on live. It will still be taped, but it'll switch over to the Mandan City Commission because it's their regularly scheduled meeting, and we need to give them their respected due. So with that, Ben and Gabe, I think you're got some of the material anyway, so I'll let you go ahead, Ben, and as we discussed, Commissioner Bakken, this is going to be informational first, correct?
Right. That was kind of the thought process on this, because from some previous meetings, there seemed to be a little bit misinformation. This has been a long-going issue between the city and the county for quite a while, and it really puts residents of the county that live in the ETA in a little bit of flux. So we'd like to figure out how to have a path forward for the growth of the city of Bismarck and what's equitable for county residents as well. So, Ben, thank you.
All right. Are you ready for me?
Yes.
Great. Greetings, Mayor, Chair, and members of the Commission. I will have probably about 20 slides. Gabe will speak on some of this as well, but generally we'll go over a history and the purpose of the ETA. We'll talk about the existing elements, the key elements of the existing agreement between Bismarck and Burleigh County, what North Dakota Century Code statute says about the ETA versus agreements, ETA agreements. Talk a little bit about our negotiated boundary and some characteristics with and without that boundary. There's been discussions in the past, and so we'll touch on this as well. Who has jurisdictional authority over what in the ETA? Gabe will speak a little bit about stormwater issues that there's been questions about. There has been a desire for us to compare similar zoning regulations between city and county, so we'll go through about 4 or 5 different zoning designations that are comparable to each other in the city and county, as well as differences between a handful of differences between building code provisions. And then finally I'll end with just some population projections for the city and for the area over the next 20 years. Any questions before I get started? Okay, seeing none. So just in general, talk about what actually is an ETA. I'll be using this term ETA a lot. You see it in your agenda packets. We call it the extraterritorial area. I'll be just referring to it as ETA from here on out, because extraterritorial area will extend this meeting a little bit longer if I continue to say that full phrase. But generally, it's a growth management tool that North Dakota Century Code allows. The intent is really to kind of have cities control their own destiny as if they believe they're going to continue to grow or expand outward, it allows them that ability to control that land outside their boundaries, to continue to expand those boundaries if there's a desire to do so. If you're looking at what an ETA, and I should say this to you, feel free to interrupt me with questions on slides at any point. If you have questions, we don't have to wait till the end. You can ask them in the moment if you've got them. But either they're based on population of the city in North Dakota, so there's 3 different tiers of city population groups that dictate how large an extraterritorial area can be. Bismarck is in one of those largest tiers. So Bismarck, if we were following North Dakota Century Code, would have up to a 4-mile extraterritorial area from the corporate limits. However, we have a negotiated agreement between Burleigh County and several others that I'll discuss in a little bit. So, but generally, size of the community can dictate the size of the ETA for other communities in the state. It does provide jurisdictional authority for subdivision, zoning, building inspection, floodplain management, and other authorities that are tied to zoning and subdivision regulations. We did not review every community in the state, but we did review every community over 5,000 population in the state. It appears all of them are using their extraterritorial jurisdiction authority. So for Bismarck, we are talking about the agreement or the extraterritorial area and agreement between Burleigh County. But we actually have 4 other agreements with other jurisdictions within the region. Hold on. Does anybody know how to get that yes, no question off the off the screen? Has that ever happened before? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're seeing a... Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep going if nobody else can see it. We happen to have 4 other agreements, and I'll pull up the laser pointer here. So this map, I'll go into a little bit more detail later in the presentation. But if you're looking on the screen, sort of the yellow line that you can see, and it kind of goes under this red line here and goes back around. That's the existing agreement. That's the existing agreement line with Burleigh County. I'll go over some of these other lines a little bit later in the presentation. But in addition to that agreement defining this boundary, we also have agreements with the city of Lincoln, roughly in this area, who has their own extraterritorial area as well. Apple Creek Township, which is this township here, Naughton Township, which is this township up here, as well as Missouri Township, which is this township here, which essentially is limiting what could be up to the 4-mile ETA. It pulls it back by agreement to something less than that 4-mile extraterritorial area. There's a pretty extensive history from a state perspective and local perspective on the use of the extraterritorial area. I'll thank Daniel Nairn, who's our planning manager, who pulled up a lot of this history, and I'll go over some of these milestones of the ETA in the state and locally. So 1929 was where it first showed up in North Dakota state law. At that time, it granted cities up to a 6-mile extraterritorial area from the corporate limits. 1935, Bismarck Planning and Zoning Commission was created, and through the minutes, it appears that to some extent the Planning and Zoning Commission was exercising their extraterritorial areas. There were a number of subdivisions platted outside of the annexed boundary, but within that 6-mile limit. 1955 is when the state legislature gave counties the ability to engage in planning and zoning activities and could create their own planning commissions. In 1975, that's kind of where I guess we would call more the modern extraterritorial zoning authority was created. municipalities at that time were required to adopt extraterritorial zoning by ordinance if they wanted to retain that extraterritorial jurisdiction in those areas. 1976, Bismarck adopts its first its first ETA zoning ordinance. 1978, the North Dakota Supreme Court ruled that Bismarck could exercise its extraterritorial area within Apple Creek Township, which had prior zoning authority. So at that time, Bismarck's ETA did go into Apple Creek Township, who also had the ability to zone, and it ended up in Supreme Court that Bismarck had the authority to exercise its extraterritorial area jurisdiction in that area. 1981, the state legislature changed the way it measures the extraterritorial area from a radial or rounded distances from the corporate limits to quarter sections. So that's why you see more squared off extraterritorial boundaries, is because it's being measured by quarter sections. So generally, if, let's just say it's 4 miles from the boundary and it's a curve from that 4 miles from the boundary, if it's more than 50% of the area, that quarter section, it's included within that jurisdiction's ETA. If it touches that quarter section but is less than 50%, it is not included. And so that's how it is measured for distances from the corporate limits. 1982, that's when Bismarck had its last overhaul of its zoning and subdivision regulations. So 1982, 2005, we're doing that whole process over again, more than 40 years later, going through another overhaul. But 1982 was the immediately previous last overhaul of the zoning and subdivision regulations. And in 1982, it did include reference and inclusion of the extraterritorial zoning authority. In 1997, this is when the state legislature created what's called a joint jurisdictional authority for the outer half of extraterritorial areas. So let's just take a community the size of Bismarck, which would by state statute allow a 4-mile ETA from the corporate limits. That inner 2 miles would be the sole authority of, let's say, Bismarck. That outer 2 miles would be jointly approved for zoning and subdivision authority by city, and in this case, Burleigh County. So that's when that joint jurisdictional authority first appeared. 2002 Bismarck Growth Management Plan. This must have been one of our first growth management plans, but it adopted recommendations to expand Bismarck's extraterritorial area to a 4-mile ETA. So in the past, prior to 2002, Bismarck did not take full effect of that 4-mile ETA. That growth management plan suggested that it should. In 2003, Bismarck did then adopt a 4-mile extraterritorial area, expanding the ETA from 85 square miles up to 146 square miles. 2010, this kind of goes through a history of our existing agreements that I touched on earlier, but that's when we signed an agreement with Apple Creek Township, basically to remove a portion of what Bismarck could have in its extraterritorial area, limit it back within the Apple Creek Township. Same with 2011 Naughton Township, where we are completely out of Naughton Township at this point. 2013, Bismarck enters into an agreement with Burleigh County, City of Lincoln, to establish the boundary, essentially mostly what you see today. So Bismarck's extraterritorial area at that point went from 147 square miles now back to 101 square miles. 2021, Bismarck-Burleigh County ETA agreement was amended. Many of you were part of this amendment or may remember this amendment, but it basically pushed Bismarck's ETA boundary back kind of in the Hawk Tree area to account for, I believe it's the Summit development or Summit subdivision. Basically, that subdivision was going to be split by Bismarck and Burleigh County. This agreement basically pulled that ETA line back, so the Summit development was wholly within Burleigh County at that point. 2023, and I'll go through some of this in a little bit more detail as well, but Bismarck, later on in the presentation, but Bismarck and Apple Creek amended their agreement. There was, in the initial agreement, there was some reference to floodplain administration that was supposed to be taking place by Bismarck, but really hadn't been done, as Apple Creek Township had actually taken over that responsibility. And then eventually, I think you all now, Burleigh County now has an agreement contracted with Apple Creek to do their floodplain administration. So we amended the agreement to recognize that. Kind of back in that 2010, 2011 timeframe, we also established an agreement with Missouri Township to stay virtually completely out of Missouri Township. However, neither party, neither the city of Bismarck nor Missouri Township, we had the agreement, but neither party had a signed agreement. So finally in 2004, we actually got a signed agreement, even though we had been recognizing the agreement. No one could find it, but now we do have the signed agreement. So, okay, a little bit of the differences between and North Dakota Century Code essentially allows two options for an extraterritorial area. Again, I'll probably be referring to the largest tier, or I will be referring to the largest tier of ETA in Bismarck, because that's what's relevant to us. But North Dakota Century Code would allow, for a community the size of Bismarck, up to a 4-mile extraterritorial area from the corporate limits. Mentioned this earlier, but those inner 2 miles would be the sole jurisdiction or authority of the city of Bismarck. Those outer 2 miles for zoning and subdivision approval would be have to go through joint approvals from both the city and county in that outer 2-mile area. And there is a process to extend that extraterritorial boundary every time the city annexes or adds land to it, expands out those corporate limits. There is sort of a process in place to then add those equivalent miles of the extraterritorial area out to match that 4 miles. We do not have this 4-mile limit. We have basically a negotiated agreement between 5 different parties, including Burleigh County. So in this case, it's whatever boundary we all decide is appropriate. I would say at no point does the extraterritorial area go out to the full 4 miles. I would say maybe it varies on average between 2.5 to 3.5 miles out. The difference is that within that entire negotiated area, Bismarck has sole jurisdictional authority within that whole area, and there is no joint jurisdictional agreement. The other difference that exists between what state statute would allow, there is really no process to expand that boundary unless you all agree that you want it expanded or contracted. There is really no process unless you all call for that opportunity to change that boundary. Some of the highlights of what's currently in Burleigh County's, Bismarck-Burleigh County's agreement, again, originally adopted in 2013 and amended at the end of 2021, signed by all parties, I think, early 2022. The boundary in 2013 was reduced from the 4-mile extraterritorial area based on the negotiations that took place at that time. The permitting authority for zoning, subdivision, building permits, stormwater management, and floodplain administration is conducted by the city of Bismarck within the extraterritorial area outlined in the agreement. Subdivision plats that are in the ETA area are forwarded still to Burleigh County Commission for acceptance of right-of-way. This is also listed in the agreement, but both parties will retain a fully certified building official. The agreement automatically renews every 2 years unless the Bismarck City Commission and Burleigh County Commission request a change. And there's more to the agreement, but I've kind of hit the highlights here. But the last item I'll talk about, the agreement may be canceled within a 6-month notice by either party or may be amended at any time upon written agreement by both parties. Some of the characteristics, I referenced this map a little earlier, but I'll go into a little bit more detail of some of the population and area characteristics. So that yellow line again represents the current ETA boundary between city and county. Within that current agreement, there's a population of about 12,500 people. Land area just within that area is about 64.03 miles. Without the agreement, it would push outwards, probably add a little over 1,200 people to about 13,700 people, and grow to about 101 square miles. We are not in this scenario here. We are not including Naughton Township, Apple Creek Township, or Missouri Township, as really we're just discussing Bismarck and Burleigh here. But if those townships were included, that area would expand even more, the population would expand even more. But for purposes of this discussion, we're just discussing the impacts of the agreement with Burleigh County. A little bit of the timeline of recent discussions on this. So this group, or actually the Bismarck-Burleigh Joint Committee, brought this topic up in 2023. We appeared, or various of us appeared, I think 7 times in 2023 and 2024 to discuss this. I'll hit some of the high points here. But essentially, we provided an introductory presentation on the ETA, much like we're doing now to the group. There was a request at that time for more information on who has jurisdiction over what things in the ETA. I do have a slide on that. I will go over that in a little bit. But the next meeting, staff provided that information. At that point, there was a request to meet with all parties who have an agreement with Bismarck, extraterritorial agreement, including Burleigh County, City of Lincoln, Apple Creek Township, Naughton Township, and Missouri Township. Those groups met, or staff representatives from those jurisdictions met at the end of October in 2023. The group did establish some items in looking at the boundary and the agreements. The group did feel it was appropriate to meet on regular intervals every 2 years. So that was in 2023. We're in 2025. So it is appropriate that this discussion is occurring because this is kind of that 2-year time frame to look at the boundary again. We did notice kind of inconsistencies in the existing agreement with Apple Creek Township in terms of who was actually conducting floodplain administration. So recommendations were made to change that. Also recommendations were made to modify Naughton Township recommendation. They had some older language in the Bismarck-Naughton agreement that referred to both the 2-mile and 4-mile limits, which were no longer relevant. Both these changes have been made and signed off on by the parties. The third thing that I didn't include in here was finding the signed agreement or getting a signed agreement with Missouri Township, which was also done. The information was then presented to the Bismarck-Burleigh Council at the beginning of December. There was a question at that point to determine if building inspections activities and authority could be conducted in Burleigh County ETA by the county and city still retain zoning and subdivision authority. We did conduct some research on that at the time. Apparently we did discover that there were 2 Attorney General's opinions that the building inspections activities need to be linked to the zoning and subdivision authority. So decoupling those, at least based on that Attorney General's opinion, was not an option. Staff noted after conferring with all the parties from the October 30th meeting that I guess we were comfortable with the boundary the way it was. There was not a need to expand or contract based on some of those conversations. There was a request to hear more information about the community rating system. And so I believe staff provided at the March 5th meeting a presentation on the community rating system. I think Burleigh County is in the process of investigating or perhaps pursuing that CRS approval, which I think was probably driven from this meeting. And then on June 4th of 2024, I think there were questions about issues of stormwater challenges that existed in the extraterritorial area. I believe Gabe Schell, city engineer, provided a presentation on some of those subdivisions that were questioned that had stormwater challenges at that time. Here's some of the jurisdictional authority and who's responsible for what in the extraterritorial area that was provided at a previous meeting as well, but for planning and zoning activities, that's the Community Development Department of the City of Bismarck. Our planning manager is sort of the key person for those activities. Zoning and building code enforcement, also Community Development Department. Our building official, Brady Blaskowski, is the sort of the key point person related to those items. Building permitting and inspections, again, community development, the building official. Floodplain management, community development, building official. In addition to the building official's duties as the building official, Brady also wears another hat as the floodplain administrator for the City of Bismarck and the extraterritorial area. Stormwater management and planning done jointly between Bismarck Engineering and Burleigh County Engineering. The stormwater management enforcement, I think, has been identified as Bismarck Public Works within the stormwater program. And the formal name for the accumulation of certain items, or some people just refer to it as the junk ordinance, is the responsibility of the Bismarck-Burleigh Public Health Environmental Health Officer, and often the building official gets brought into these cases as well, and sometimes municipal court, depending on if they are corrected or not. This item, for this slide, I'll let Gabe speak to this slide.
Hello, Gabe Schell, city engineer. Just have a quick slide here to talk about some of the stormwater management timelines. The first item that we have of note is 1996 and 1997 is when the city planning and zoning created our Title 14.1 that created stormwater regulations for both the city as well as the ETA. So I will note that anything predating that 1996 timeframe definitely didn't have any the same scrutiny that it has now, or even that it had in 1996, both in the ETA as well as within city limits. As we move on into the year 2000, that was our first stormwater design standards were implemented. So that kind of created the rule book by which developments would play by that would then fall in line with the 1996-97 ordinance. We let that sit for 11 years or so, and then in 2011, we amended 14.1 to then include county engineering concurrence on all reviews and approvals in the ETA. I can't speak to why that wasn't included originally necessarily, but that was noted as an area of improvement for in 2011. And then our most recent update to both the design standards and the Title 14.1 was in 2017, and that was an even broader group that included engineering staff, Burleigh County staff, Burleigh County Water Resource, and Burleigh County Commission representatives. So I guess just wanted to provide that timeline on stormwater in the ETA.
Thank you, Gabe. Now, for the next few slides, we'll go through a series of comparisons between Bismarck, Burleigh County, first with zoning, then with building inspections, and include permit fees for both entities as well, for both planning activities as well as building permit fees. So in this case, we've tried, for zoning, we've tried to compare as close as apples to apples as we can between a similar residential zoning or a similar zoning district in Burleigh County compared to Bismarck. In this case, we're looking at the rural residential zoning designation, and in the middle here is really the category that we're talking about. I don't I've tried not to list where we are similar. Basically, I'm trying to list where we are different. And in this case, uses by right, so those are uses that you don't need any additional or special authority to have. So a rural residential, a common use by right would be a single-family home. So I'm not listing single-family residential in these areas just because they're both allowed in both cases. I'm just listing the differences. So in Bismarck, one difference is we have listed public recreation is allowed, not identified in Burleigh County, but in Burleigh County, religious, golf course, and truck farming activities are allowed, not identified in Bismarck as a use by right. For special uses, that's where Bismarck identifies religious and childcare uses as special uses in this area. No special uses identified in Burleigh County. Chickens, up to 10 allowed within Bismarck's zoning code, not addressed currently in Burleigh County's code. Accessory structures, so those would be like garages, shops, those types of things, up to 3,200 square feet with a special use permit. In Burleigh County, it's essentially 4% of the lot area and no special use permit. I should note, this is a really good one to talk about too. We see a lot of these at our Bismarck Planning and Zoning Commission come through as special uses. I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of updating our zoning and subdivision regulations for the city of Bismarck. Basically, areas that we're talking about here where Burleigh County is more permissive than Bismarck, and this is probably one of those key areas. We're proposing, or at least will propose, that our ordinance match Burleigh County's. So in the future, when the zoning and subdivision regulations are adopted in Bismarck, there won't be this 3,200 square foot limit. It'll sort of match what Burleigh County's is with the 4% of lot area, and will hopefully no longer be a special use permit. For home occupations, Bismarck recently went through a process to update its home-based occupations, which would allow up to 3 external employees and up to 50% of the primary home and 100% of the accessory building, and with sales allowed unless traffic becomes problematic. For Burleigh County, there is some differences. No external employees allowed, no more than 25% of home, and no on-premise sales. For the agricultural district, again, both uses by right were very similar, so didn't really even note any by right uses. Special uses, Bismarck has private riding called out. Not necessarily called out in Burleigh County, but what's not called out in Bismarck is rodeos, racetracks, wind turbines, meat packing, animal feeding operations, all allowed by special use permit, but not in Bismarck. Dimensional standards, there are some differences here. Bismarck would have a 660-foot minimum lot width with a front yard setback from a collector at 125 feet. Compared to Burleigh County, which would have a lot width of 640 feet with a front setback from the collector at 65 feet. Again, these areas where Burleigh County is more permissive, with our update, we would propose to align with where Burleigh County is at on those. Accessory structures, 1% of the lot area up to 5,000 square feet. With a special use permit, you could go up to 8,000 square feet if the lot was 35 acres or more, and 15,000 square feet if 70 acres or more. Burleigh County's is 4% of the lot area. We tend to like that as staff. We think that's a simple, effective way to do it. Again, we would propose to align with Burleigh County here. Home occupations, again, I went through this previously, but there are some differences with the home occupations allowed that are similar in the ag district as they are the residential. For the floodplain district, Bismarck regulates to the 100-year floodplain. Burleigh County regulates to the 100 and the 500-year floodplain. Both have additional development standards next to the Missouri River. Bismarck's is 100-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark, and 75 feet, I think this should be 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark from Army Corps of Engineers stabilized bank. Burleigh County's doesn't account for the 75 feet for stabilized bank. And including variances, we don't list any variances allowable. Burleigh County lists a condition of approval for a variance of a new construction of a substantial improvement on a lot less than 1.5 acres in size and contiguous to this and surrounded by lots with existing structures constructed below the base flood elevation to be constructed below the base flood elevation. So that's a variance that's allowed that is not identified in Bismarck's ordinance. For the agricultural recreation, I think Burleigh County just very recently, even as of last night, might have adopted the ag recreation zoning designation in your commission meeting last night. But for Bismarck, minor ag recreation uses are allowed, which would be up to 75 individuals at any one time, and must be related to the agricultural use. No special use permit would be required in Bismarck for these, as long as they were kept under 75 individuals at any one time. For the major, it's if there's 75 up to 250 people, must be related to the agricultural production of the site. It would be allowed for 30 calendar days of the year. That would require a special use permit for those major types of events as we've defined them. Burleigh County defines them a little bit differently, and I think both, and Mitch can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both the sort of what would be maybe more of a minor and a more of a major require special use permits. For the 10-acre or more type uses, you could do U-pick orchards, hay rides, tractor rides, farm animal petting, testing events, and others related to the principal agricultural use. And there are 50 people or less per day allowed for up to 50 days per year and must meet certain standards. For the 40 acres or more, these would be more like, types of uses would be more like domestic wineries, domestic distilleries, brewer tap rooms, any event related to principal agricultural use with more than 50 people per day, or any event occurring more than 75 days per year. So I'm just going to confirm, Mitch, do both of those require a special use permit?
The bottom one, the 40 acres or more, we have simplified it to be a special use for everything.
So the 10-acre and the 40-acre?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So special use permits are required for both the 10-acre event or 10-acre events associated with 10-acre sites and 40-acre sites. So special use permits are associated with both. So here's a comparison of planning and zoning fees. Generally, Bismarck's tend to be higher than Burleigh County's. For Bismarck, generally how we establish our fees is based on the amount of staff time that's put into them. So we look at the average, what would be the average hourly rate of a planner versus the average amount of, compared to the average amount of time it typically takes to process these different things. Usually they're still not 100%. Generally they range between covering the cost of 75 to 90% of the cost of what it costs staff to review and process these things. But you can see, here for major subdivisions, we break it down in Bismarck by acres. In Burleigh County, it's broken down by lots, but less than 3 acres is $950. For 1 to 2 acres or 1 to 2 lots is $200. I'll just jump to the 10-acre, greater than 10 acres, $1,350 in Bismarck. 21 lots or more, $900. For minor plats, let's see, we break it down kind of more by acreage and the size of the development, ranging from $1,700 to $1,900. Burleigh County looks like their minor plat is at $200. And then for zoning map changes or zoning map amendments, ranging from $1,250 to $1,450. Looks like they're around $500 in Burleigh County. For special use permits, $700, and Bismarck, $300 in Burleigh County. Going into residential building code and building and residential code items now, really there's probably literally 4 or 5 what we would identify as more significant differences between the codes. I think Burleigh County tends to adopt what the state of North Dakota adopts as the building code, I think almost verbatim. We've had, like I said, maybe 4 or 5 amendments to that locally, and I'll go through what those are. So for relating to frost protection or frost protected foundations, in this, Bismarck recently made a change to allow an exception to allow frost protected foundations for various S or storage type uses and U utility occupancies. So a utility occupancy might be an accessory type structure like a garage, a fence, something like that. So we allow exceptions for the storage facilities and the utility occupancies. Burleigh County allows for the utility and not the S storage. Related to decks and whether they need frost protected foundation, Burleigh County does provide an exemption from frost protection with no exclusion for deck types. I think in Bismarck, we provide the exception if it's non-covered, but if it is covered, we require that to be frost protected, and also for light frame construction, accessory buildings greater than 200 square feet should be on a monolithic slab on grade with turn-down footings. And I think these are the last 2 changes, so I guess there was 4, but in Bismarck, when we talk about the height from the floor, in this case we're talking about the sill height for egress windows in the basement to get out of your basement in case there is a fire. So in Bismarck, we've adopted that sill height can't be any higher than 44 inches. And state code, which is what Burleigh County's is as well, is that sill height can be higher. It can be up to 48 inches. Why that matters, we believe it's easier for a firefighter to get out if it's 44 inches versus 48 inches if there's a fire going on with all their gear. And then the last item here we'll call out, or that I guess of substance, there's various administrative details that are different, but when it comes to regulation, it really doesn't make much of a hill of beans from that perspective. But the height of exterior load-bearing walls would be allowed in Bismarck up to 12 feet. In Burleigh County would be allowed up to 10 feet. For a building permit, I got to provide a little bit of explanation here. So these 2 tables reflect the charts to identify what the value of structures is. And once that value is established, then there's multiplier tables, and each Bismarck and Burleigh have these tables that if, let's say you get a value of $200,000 for a structure, you then look at the multiplier table and there's ranges. So between $100,000 and $300,000, X number of dollars permit fee is charged. So I've got to do a little bit of an explanation here because it's not very straightforward how the permit fees are calculated. You need to do a little bit of math to get there. But in terms of establishing the value of the structure, there are some slight differences, and some Bismarck's higher and some Burleigh County's higher. When it comes down to it, if you're just looking at the cost of just a single-family home, a 2,000 square foot single-family home, when you run it through the multiplier tables, it'd be about $1,400 for a permit fee in Bismarck and about $1,750 in Burleigh County, so relatively close, I think, from both parties there. And then the last slide I'll talk about is just what the future holds, or what our crystal ball is telling us for the region. So our 2045, we're at Bismarck right now is at a population a little over 76,000 based on the latest estimates. By 2045, we're projecting actually just under 100,000 population for the city of Bismarck. What that means from a land area need, that could range anywhere from 12 additional square miles up to 16 and a half additional square miles, depending on growth patterns and how that growth occurs, either more dense or less dense. This map actually, I think, is our latest growth, what we call our growth phasing plan. So it identifies essentially, to think about it, the areas easiest for Bismarck to serve with services, primarily water and sewer services. So the orange sort of pockets showing up on the map are probably the areas that are not necessarily incorporated into the city, but would be easy to serve it once they become incorporated. The darker orange or burnt orange colors on the map, you see those are kind of the next easiest areas to serve. And so if one assumes that every undeveloped piece of property in Bismarck is developed and all of these colored orange areas are developed, that would probably be, that growth occurs contiguous to the city, as this map is showing. That would be about 20 years of growth for the city of Bismarck. So with that, are there any questions? That's the end of the presentation part of the information that we have.
Who has questions at this point? Commissioner Zinker.
Mayor, Commissioners, Chair Bittner and County Commissioners. So I got a question for Mitch and Marcus. I mean, that presentation was 100% provided by City of Bismarck employees. Do they have anything to add to that presentation or anything they disagree with, or, kind of what's their side of the story, so to speak?
Commissioners, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Zenker, we have nothing to add right now. This is open for discussion. What he talked about on the presentation was basically a brief description of our jurisdiction in the city of Bismarck. So there's nothing that we can add. This is, by law, this is the ETA area is the city of Bismarck's. So the consideration of this would, we have to wait till decisions are made or some kind of change to agreements, and then we can add comments or considerations at that time.
So Mitch, just, I guess for comparison purposes, did Ben and his team capture what you feel are the significant differences between zoning and permitting type items, county versus city? I mean, that's one of the considerations here I think, are trying to deal with.
Besides the difference in our zonings, no, it was pretty accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So
Go ahead, Commissioner Schwab.
Does the ETA have to be 4 miles, or can it be smaller?
So I think, Ben, you can address this.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Chair, and Commissioners. Commissioner Schwab, yes, it can be smaller. In fact, ours is smaller. It's smaller than that 4 mile ETA by agreement.
Okay, I'll comment on that a little later then.
Okay.
Commissioner Bakken, did you have a comment?
So one of the reasons I think this was beneficial for those that live in the ETA and for city residents to understand that is we all know that Bismarck is growing. In the meantime, what we're trying to do is kind of check an equity box a little bit. There's issues that come up that residents in the ETA are dealing with. I don't want to necessarily say cumbersome, but possibly some excessive regulation in some cases when they're trying to do what they see fit with their property. Fully noting that that's a future growth area for the city of Bismarck. And I think this is a great start to maybe spur some better conversations as that agreement's coming up again this year for review, as Ben mentioned, that if there's some areas that we can address some of the issues that residents in the ETA have concerning how they're managed and the jurisdiction that they're under, while they're a county resident, I think this is a good place to start with that conversation.
So with that, that kind of leads us to the next topic,
It does.
or at least on the agenda. So this time, we would like to have public comment, and I guess, you know, I think my hope would be is, let's hear some good constructive things that we can work on that would make things, as Commissioner Bakken mentioned, maybe less burdensome or.
Or cumbersome.
Or cumbersome, whatever the term might be. So, as you come forward, I believe there's a sign-in sheet at the podium. Please sign in, state your name, and then tell us what you want to tell us, please. Anyone?
My name's Jim Cook. So what is the, he said it can be shorter than 4. What is the actual, from the city limit out? Where you have jurisdiction and county does? 2 or 4?
So it varies.
It varies.
Because, I think the way the city has grown with annexation from when the original line was set, and trying to look at where the city might grow, so there is not a set distance from the city corporate limits.
Sure. I live, see, and why I'm wondering, I live on Country Creek, 5th Estate, 6700 Dakota Country Drive. I called the city, and not that I'm going to get chickens. I was thinking of it till I had common sense kick in. And so they said I could not have chickens, but yet I'm way out in Country Creek. So I called twice just to make sure, and they checked my address, says, no, you're not allowed chickens there. But yet on 42nd and 53rd, guy has chickens sitting right there. Now that's much closer to the city. And there's multiple other places that do. So I think we really need to get, I've watched commissioning meetings, county, city, Burleigh, for years. I hardly miss a meeting and watch them all. What I don't understand is if they're going to allow people to do it in spots where they're not supposed to, but yet tell me the person that actually goes by the rules and regulations that I can't, when are we going to get to the point where we're going to weed out the people that have blatant, and it's just not with chickens, it's crap yards, things like that. I know there's rules and regulations, but why isn't anything done to the people that don't go by all the rules and regs, and then the honest people have to go by it because they're raised honest? You know what I'm saying? It gets to the point where why even have any regulations if they're not going to be enforced? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so,
And that was one of the things too, is the enforcement side of that, and that's one of the, I don't want to call it a loophole, but I guess that's a hole in the regulations, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate some of that as well, so.
I'll add on to that a little bit. Realistically, it appears that the city doesn't have authority outside the city limits.
okay.
So that's a big part of our concern. I know as recently as, I don't know, maybe a week ago, I contacted the city about a property that needed some cleanup,
Sure.
and it's still the same way as when I called. So Burleigh County has a state's attorney and a sheriff's department and whatnot, and Burleigh County is not in a position where we're enforcing city ordinances, and the city doesn't have the ability to prosecute outside of the city, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nothing really makes sense with it all, because it's just not right for the law-abiding people, but
Right.
whatever.
You're
So,
right.
so then with the chickens then, why is it that I was told, just getting back to that, that I can't, but yet there's multiple places closer, way closer to the city, and they can. So did they just not call?
We
Do
can-
they call? Don't they call? Doesn't
Well,
they care?
I think we can potentially have someone answer that for us. I can't answer that because I
Okay,
don't
that's
know the
all I
answer
have.
to
Thank you
why.
for your time.
That's why we're here.
Yep. So I don't know, it probably depends on where it was specifically, but Ben or Brady can, because I thought we have some areas of rural residential that chickens are permitted in ordinance, in the ETA.
He happens to be located in our jurisdiction.
Okay,
So probably he's talking about chickens that are closer than that would be in the ETA.
which would we allow them?
Yeah, but why then was I told I can't?
Because you just said you could.
Huh?
Mitch just said.
Well,
No,
they,
we don't, yeah, let me say, we don't have any ordinances on chickens. We allow the horses, we haven't got any special use permits for chickens yet. If that's what people want, we can certainly consider that.
told I had to call the city.
Oh, so, I mean,
So when
No, I
I,
mean-
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, when they said I can't, and I said, well, other people have them close, and she said, well, where you live, you cannot have chickens. So maybe I should have called the county, but then if they're gonna say I can, and you say I can't,
He-
which
but-
would be great.
But you didn't, he just said you can't.
Yeah, we,
Yeah.
not, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh, I thought
stop.
you said you can.
Oh, yeah,
No.
okay.
We do not have an allowance in our ordinance currently right now for chickens. That may be certainly a consideration in the future. So it's,
So why does everybody else get chickens and I can't?
Because we who, Ben or Brady, anytime you want to jump in here.
They're hiding behind the pillar.
Am I? Yeah. But we allow it within the ETA under our jurisdiction.
Oh, okay.
So that's, hey, totally confusing, right? Get it? That's the great thing about this conversation is we'll figure some of those out. Yep.
That's
So
the biggest-
you're upset because you live in the county and you're told you can't have chickens,
Right.
and which probably would be a little bit more practical that you could because you live in the county, but yet in the ETA closer to the city, they can. And this guy wants to put them in the city limits, but this guy doesn't. So- Let's just stir the pot some more. He's warming up to the idea.
For what, I think for what it's worth, a lot of people have chickens. And, you know, yeah, there's,
EPA?
yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of other, I mean, in the county.
They have bigger lots.
Yeah, it's complaint based. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Tyson Austin. I live in the ETA. I've got almost 5 acres, 4.6 acres. Kind of sounds like you guys have addressed this already, but it frustrates me that with the land that I have, I can only have 3,200 square foot of outbuildings when I have the dirt that I've got, horses, we've got chickens. I've got a huge garden. I'd like to put up a greenhouse, but because I have a pole barn and a horse barn, I'm basically out of square footage. There's other things landscaping related. I own a landscaping company. I would like to have an outdoor kitchen and a pavilion and all kinds of stuff at my house that I can't have because it's considered an accessory building. If I went by Burleigh County's measurements, I could have almost 8,000 square feet of accessory buildings. Right now at 3,200 square feet, that's kind of a slap in the face. I understand that there's got to be rules and things have to make sense, you know. But I'm also in an area where, according to your own map, you're not planning annexation in the 40-year plan. So my rural residential area is going to be rural residential for a long time. We've got a huge garden. I plan on having a farmer's market. That's kind of my going to farmer's market, not having one. But that's kind of my retirement plan. It's something my grandpa did, and I want to kind of continue that legacy. I've got an orchard at my house, and I've got plans for things that I would like to do, and I'm really stifled by I can't even have a greenhouse. You know, I've got 2.5 acres on our north pasture that I'm not using right now that I thought I'd put a greenhouse in, and I can't because it's considered a permanent structure. Now, granted, it's made out of poly, and I don't really see how that's permanent, but that's what it's considered, and I'm not allowed to use it. I also can't build my pavilion because I don't have the square footage to do it. I have a ton of stuff that I use at my house. I use a skid steer for snow removal. We've got a ton of toys. And all of that stuff I would like inside a building, and my only real option is to add on to my garage, and that's just not feasible with where I'm at. I mean, we're kind of pushed up against the north side of our property, and that's where our garage is, and I can't go off the south side because I've got septic system over there. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it's because I'm being told that you can't do this, even though someone who's got, an acre of land can build the same kind of structures that I'm allowed to have. And that's just a very frustrating thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ben, can you just clarify, when you talked about the zoning comparisons, agricultural and rural residential, the changes that that you guys are talking about making now to align with the county, would that fix or help with his issue?
That would address Tyson's issue.
Okay.
It would basically, what we're proposing to do is align with where the county is at for accessory
So then he'd be able
structures.
to do most or all of what he's talking about on
Yes,
his, okay.
including without need for a special use permit, which exists now.
Where are we at with those changes? Like you said you're currently doing them? What's
So
timeframe?
the timeframe was originally looking at adoption by the end of this year.
Okay.
Going through the adoption phase, I'll look to Daniel. Are we still on track for that timeframe?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Okay, so by the end of the year, so.
at least we're making progress, right, Tyson? Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for me?
No, and we thank you for your concerns. Those were well heard before, so appreciate it.
My name is Dennis Wetzel. I live at 6111 Apple Creek Drive. And unfortunately, I'm in the ETA and also in the special flood hazard area. And I've spoken to the Burleigh County Commission and City Commission over the last couple of years. And, it started with trying to add on to my detached garage. And I've been through many ordinance changes and through 2 flood map changes. And, that was my original intent. And I understand, trying to, uniform the ordinances and the rules, but I think there's always going to be differences between the county and the city. I mean, we move out to the county so we can have larger accessory buildings, and they're never going to be the same. And I'm not sure why we are in the ETA are treated differently than the other county residents. I mean, I understand the growth, but I live in Faulkner Addition. There's going to be no growth for the city down in the south part. I mean, talk to the developers at Paradise Valley, how much money they're spending on sewer and water connection. And in Faulkner's Addition, there's probably like 4 lots that are left, and I think 2 or 3 of them are in the floodway. So, I mean, they're not going to be built on. So, I think you could easily remove Faulkner Addition from the ETA, and you're not going to jeopardize any future growth. And we're in Lincoln Township, I think. So where are we at in this, like the agreements that you have? Is Lincoln Township part of the city? Do they have their own officers?
No, I can answer that. I believe that Lincoln Township is an unorganized township under the jurisdiction of Burleigh County.
So, so did Lincoln Township didn't have any input into the ETA boundary?
No, that's where the county is.
County did it.
Yeah.
So how do we go about trying to get an area out of the ETA?
Well, that's why we're here today.
Right.
I mean,
That's,
I think the city will admit that there are probably some areas that need adjustment. We just gotta
Okay.
figure out what those are.
Yeah,
And
'cause
al-
we-
and also protect, I mean, one thing we have to make sure we do is we gotta protect the airport, so air traffic, so we don't have issues there. But, I mean, I think those are all things that are reasonable that you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Again, I think in the growth plan, I don't believe, we're not in the growth plan at all. I don't know what that burnt orange area was, but, so that's really all I had. Any questions?
Thank you.
Good evening. I guess I'm up here mainly to talk, I'm out in the ETA, just north of Misty Waters.
Travis, name for the record, just.
My name's Travis Jensen, 5610 Olive Tree Drive. Like I said, just north of Misty Waters, south of Ponderosa, right up on that edge of the ETA. My issue, for one, is regulation. I can tell you guys, the regulation part that a lot of us are up in arms was showed by the 3-2 vote by the city. The city was, first of all, asked to coordinate this meeting, and 3 out of 5 said, no, we don't want to hear from you guys. Our county commissioners know more about this area because they talk to the people. They are accessible. They are in the community with us. I can tell you during the 2011 flood, I seen Brian Bittner more than I seen some of my neighbors. He was down there checking on us. He was down there seeing what was going on. He was an intricate part of that effort. You guys in the city didn't want to hear from us. And the vote proves that. 3 of you basically gave us the bird and said, we don't care what you have to say. You're going to follow our rules. You're going to, hold on.
Travis,
hold
please
on.
do, please
hold
do
on,
not attack
Mayor.
people here at the table.
I'm not
Please
attacking
do.
anybody. It's
Yeah.
on the record that the vote was 3-5, Mayor. Like I said, I can reach out to my county commissioners if I have a problem, if I have a concern, and I can tell you whether they agree with me or not. I feel heard every time. And a couple of them at this table can tell you we've had arguments, and at the end of the day, I will still reach out to them every time because I feel heard. The city folks, I can't say that. I think the Misty Waters thing, we talked about accountability. I'm going to touch on that briefly here. I don't want to take up too much time. The accountability is a problem. You guys only create accountability when it suits you. Otherwise, the other areas of the ETA are misfits. And we've seen that recently up in the Misty Waters area, which is ETA. You guys changed the rules because it was convenient. They broke the rules and you guys changed them. The precedence was set that in the ETA, go ahead and build what you want to build. And after years of arguments, changeover on the commission, who you know, what you know, whatever you want to call it, we're going to change the rules to make it so you're good. You guys only give notice to the ETA when it's convenient. And that's the frustrating part. I live in the ETA. I moved up to the country because I didn't want to be part of Bismarck. Quite frankly, if I had known what the ETA was back then, I would not have purchased my lot. I was young, wasn't involved in politics. I wouldn't have purchased it. If I would have known what I know today, I would not have purchased my lot. I would have been a county resident. You guys want us to pour cement for shops. You want us to pour cement for sheds. If we're just going to put a boat or, something that doesn't need to be on concrete, what is the point of having us pour concrete? If a person wants to put up a pole barn, what's the part of a pole barn? Pole barns, I think a lot of you guys can attest that they don't look too bad these days. You can do some pretty nice things with pole barns to where they are aesthetic rather than just a Quonset. That's one of my problems is we're restricted by people that we can't vote for. And I want to add on to that, Mayor, that we are restricted by people that don't want to hear from us. And I'm going to be very loud about that because that's one of the biggest problems is that you guys don't want to hear from us and your 3-2 vote prove that. And I'll be honest with you, the whole chicken thing from a county aspect, why don't we just allow it? I'm in the ETA, I got chickens and ducks. You know, I'm to the point in the ETA where I'm tired of asking for permission. I'm just gonna start doing, and I'm gonna hope you guys give me the same precedence that you gave Misty Waters. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner Risch.
I just want to set the record straight. I was one of the 3 votes. I didn't give the thumb or the bird to anyone. There wasn't a clear description of what this meeting was going to be. We already meet with the city and county. We've got joint meetings going on. We already got an ETA agreement signed. That's why I voted no. No big deal.
But I didn't hear
I
you
love
ask-
the guys in the ETA.
I didn't hear you
Okay.
ask for clarification either. I believe that Commissioner Connolly headed that up pretty good. I was at that meeting in person. I was pretty clear on what was being asked. I apologize, maybe you didn't understand what was being asked. But that's why I sit at this table. I think everybody sitting at this table would encourage questions and clarification as leaders in this community. That is your obligation before voting to understand what you are voting on. So maybe a little bit more discussion rather than the 3-2 vote that we continually see would benefit the city. But like I said, where do I stand as an ETA resident? I can tell you half these guys I've talked to at some point within their political career. And I've been heard, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. I've had conversations, and each time I have felt hurt. I can say there's a few of you in the city that I've had discussions with, but quite frankly, you guys only want to hear from us or, you know, deal with us when issues like this arise. And I feel like a lot of us feel like orphan Annies, and that's not a good feeling that you guys should have, because us ETA folks, we are part of the Bismarck community, whether you want to realize it or not. We work in Bismarck. We send our kids to Bismarck. We patronize businesses in Bismarck. But yet you guys want to regulate over us with an iron fist and not give us any say. All you would have had to do was vote yes that night, and we would have got this rolling, because I didn't hear any problems from the county commission. Is it an extra night of their time? Yes, and I appreciate that, guys. Like I said, these folks here, they're in the community, they stand shoulder to shoulder with us, and they're always willing to take a phone call, and I appreciate it.
Hello. I think everybody knows who I am, but my name's Robert Field. And I happen to live about half a mile from Brian Bittner. No complaints about him. The big problems I have with the way the ETA is handled is basically everybody wants to control what we do out there. And there's nothing more tyrannical than saying we can't vote for the people regulating us. So election time comes, we can't run somebody for mayor, we can't run anybody for city council. But yet you guys can control how many chickens supposedly can live on my 700,000 square foot lot. I mean, just stop and think about that with a reasonable mind. So that means if you only own a 10-bedroom home in town, you can't have a parakeet because it's way too big for your lot. I mean, there's got to be some reasonable explanation for how a lot of 700,000 square feet, which for mathematically declining people, that's 16 acres. I can't have one steer, but I can have horses, and I believe I can have fish, and 10 chickens. I mean, how do you even measure that without thinking this is a comedy? I'm way out on Apple Creek, not far from 80th, between 66th and 80th. Well, that obviously isn't policed by Bismarck Police, even though I have them in my yard at 2 in the morning. It isn't policed by Lincoln. And I had the Lincoln cops pull a guy over at the end of my driveway. How much law enforcement do we need out there? There's a handful of us. I mean, it's like you guys decide how to regulate it, and then you don't pay attention to it at all. You just walk away. But it really bothers me. And I talked to an attorney on Monday, and he said if we want to fight it, we can get the right to vote. Because it's a federal case. You can't restrict our right to vote when we're being regulated. I just haven't decided if I want to waste that much money yet. And I don't believe there's anything wrong with building a pole barn, like he said in the ETA. If the city does ever get out there, anything we built on a 700,000 square foot lot, the first thing they're going to do is bulldoze the whole place and make it into lots. So what's it matter if there's a big pole barn sitting there? It'll be at the landfill in about 6 hours. They aren't going to keep that building and reuse it. Now, if they're going to build a development. But I just don't think, you know, and you look at we only pay Burleigh County tax in the ETA, and schools and specials, whatever. Even though we're regulated by the city. In town, I own a home, and I pay Burleigh County tax. What's Burleigh County doing for me as a homeowner in Bismarck? What services do I get from the county? The city and the county don't get along, so I can tell you what I get from the county. 0. And else one of you guys can tell me what the county did for Bob Field this year in town. In the ETA, they plow my road and everything else. So yes, I get Burleigh County services in the ETA. But my house in town, I don't see how I get anything from Burleigh County. Schwab, you got an answer for that?
Do I have an answer for that?
I mean, it's taxation without representation.
You want to pick on me? Okay.
Oh, you're just the closest. You're probably more used to it.
You have services from the county.
What?
You have like, what's that? There's services, whether you like it or not, for everybody that does live in the city. Anytime somebody in the city goes out into the county, they have roads to get there that the county takes care of. That's a service to them. Hunters get a service. Do you hunt?
Nope.
No, too bad.
I'm saving my animal for better reasons.
But, you know, hunters, boaters, wherever they want to go, they're getting services from the county. They're getting recreational services, boat docks, good roads to get out to the hunting grounds where they want to go, or Thanksgiving with grandma. So you can't say that you get nothing.
Okay, so
unless you don't want to drive around in town or out there. I mean, it
well, but you got gas tax and
well,
state funding and everything else. I'm saying, I mean, I understand Burleigh County does things for me in the ETA. I can't deny that. They're out there all the time working on the road. Now that the city's wrecking Apple Creek Road, you'll be out there fixing that again. But I don't see that it's an equal parallel that we should pay as much Burleigh County tax as we do in the city. And the city tax on top of it, and anything else they can dream up, and then whatever extra sales tax they can nail you with.
Think you can run government without taxes, huh?
Well, I could do without as many parks that the homeless live in. I can do without as many aquatic centers.
That'll probably be coming up at the next meeting. This is ETA.
Well,
and
it's
I
all
will
relevant.
I will tell you one thing. Some of this stuff I agree with you on, but I don't agree that all of a sudden we nuke everything without a plan in place so civilization around here can continue. Everybody complains. And a lot of times when you talk to me, you say, well, Minnesota does it this way. I don't care how the hell Minnesota does anything. I don't want to live in Minnesota. They got their problems. We have our way of doing it, and it's kind of the old West in some ways. And Bismarck is one of the last hometown big cities. And trying to preserve it within this county, you know, we try to help. And, you know, between the highway department, say, and public works, they work together fine. But if they go it alone, up go your taxes. So
So let's,
you gotta look at
I'd
the
like
whole
to bring
thing.
us back to the agenda if we
Yeah.
can. We're on the ETA, and Robert, I appreciate your comments
Yeah.
that you've made, and some of them are very valid.
As
We've
far
had
as the,
conversations in the past.
yeah, as far as the chickens go, I don't think that once your houses aren't 10 feet apart anymore, there should be room to let a chicken run around. You know, it's either that or I want the city and the county to come out and remove those illegal 50 wild turkeys that live on my property. They're all trespassing. This is a public notice. I expect you out there tomorrow morning, Schwab. I'll point out the herd and you grab them.
So I can get a tag in this zone, right?
You can go out there
You're
and shoot
good? All
them all
right.
right now. I don't care if you have a tag or not. I'm not a game warden.
Commissioner, go ahead.
I would say that if and I do live in town, I have cattle out of town. If my neighbor's got chickens and the damn thing comes over in my yard, I'm gonna have chicken.
Well, eat it.
Because it's mine then. That's the way I look at it. So you could take care of them turkeys.
They're not mine.
They're in your yard.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Robert. Anybody else? This is public comment. Anybody else like to speak? 'Cause we are about addressing issues between the ETA residents and the county and the city, and I think we've had a good conversation as far as a starting point. You know, some of the things the city are doing as far as addressing ancillary structures. I mean, there's still some places to have conversations as far as, you know, some of the required engineering that things may or may not need as opposed to the county. But, you know, the concrete's a great conversation. You know, I think the city a lot of times needs to look at what the use is in that rural area until that is part of the city. So
I got one quick request, Steve. Can we possibly look at the time? 4 o'clock is really difficult for a lot of working class folks to make. If we want some good input, and I know this was more of an educational over, you know, kind of hopefully a starting point. But in the future, if we want actual public comment and we want people that are able to make it here and you guys actually want to hear concerns, most of us blue collar work until 5 o'clock. So it'd be great to see these after that. Give us some time to, you know, get home, you know, and make it here within a reasonable time frame. So,
thanks, Travis.
Good evening. I'm Karen Martinezson. My husband and I live northeast of town, and we have farmland that is now in the ETA. And I share the concern that we have no representation with the city. It was interesting to me that there can be joint jurisdiction, and that isn't happening, to my understanding. Is it right? Just the city has the jurisdiction?
Under the negotiated
Under the-
ETA, that's how, if it weren't negotiated, then there would be 2 miles roughly of joint jurisdiction.
Yeah. So I mean, if you can't change in any other way, I'd sure like to see at least joint jurisdiction in those external miles where we would have some representation from the county. And that's my comment. Any questions?
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, while she's finishing writing that up. So, is it about joint jurisdiction from a planning and zoning perspective? Because I think we have that now, correct? And, or what other expand in that joint jurisdiction, I guess? Just so what you wanted, because I think we already have.
Planning and zoning
Planning and
has got
zoning has,
representation.
yeah, has joint jurisdiction. I don't think we could have, unless state law changes, joint jurisdiction from city to county on our boards. So,
Well, other than
I
planning
think maybe that's a,
zoning, yeah.
yeah, if we have it on P and Z, is if we're cool with that, but maybe there's a clarification we should get from both our legal teams.
Good evening. I'm Gerald Kuntz. I live out at Leisure World Estates, and I fall under the extraterritorial. I guess I just don't understand. I know it was touched on earlier, but that you guys realize we can't vote for you? We can't run for the offices because of the extraterritorial? I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that. Thank you.
Mayor, Chair, and Commissioners, the reason why I'm standing up here under public comment is I asked for something to be added to this agenda, and I was told no. And that frustrates me because it's part of this discussion for a long time. And I appreciate the fact that Ben shared that this history is a lot longer than even what I looked up. On some levels, this has been discussed since 1929. And the reason why I was told that part of it was not going to be discussed was that the topic would be if the ETA did not exist, the practice of greenfield assessments and abeyance would be still implemented without the ETA. Well, if it's been part of the discussion since 1929 and it's been part of the practice for 48 years, why are we saying that, well, if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be part of this discussion? So when I look to our agenda and under Senate Bill 2180 and allowing the space for public comment, and it has to be related to agenda items, public comment relating to the ETA. So under the idea of, I shouldn't be up here talking about this, but it's a practice that we employ right now. There was a house south of the Burleigh tree that their septic system went out, and whether it was plumbing code or other reasoning, I get different stories. Their annexation into the community under the assessments, they got a greenfield assessment for just under $57,000. This is not, part of the reason for having these discussions is and bringing it to the table so we can have a raw and genuine discussion about some of the impacts of things that happen to people on the fringes. And I had a very good discussion with one of the department heads, but part of that discussion is outside of 4 miles, I don't find anybody wanting to be annexed into the community. But on the fringes or within the 2 miles, on a house by house or property by property basis for any properties that have existed for a while, these dollars, these greenfield assessments can add up very quickly. And so I tried to ask questions, and I just picked 3 areas, and I asked for generic examples so people could understand that, what those impacts might entail, knowing that each of these would be highly individual. And we do have several services that have different levels of assessment, so no one property is going to be the same. And we have memorandums of understanding where if people want a single-family home or build an outbuilding, like some of the people mentioned, it's occurred in our staff reports to where if you want this on your property, then you have to agree to this if the city ever expands that far. And I just think that in the future, as we have another one of these discussions, that pick some examples so people understand some of the dollars and cents that might apply to them individually. And leaving it out as if it might not happen when we're currently employing some of these practices. New development, that was taken care of with the water utility rate changes in 18. But old existing developments, that could be significantly different. And I was part of looking for these answers in 2017, with 2 mayors ago, and it's a question that's always hung true. I've had several discussions. I know citizens want to know what those impacts are. So I wrote 5 pages worth of stuff, and I could have been a lot more direct and a lot more bold with it. But I would say, take another swing. Let's add that to our discussion and be real with our citizens. They, like many said, they can't vote for us at the city, but they deserve representation, regardless of what seat we own. Thank you.
Did you have something, Commissioner Schwab?
Is public comment going to be over here?
Yeah, turn your mic on.
We haven't closed it yet.
Okay. I'll wait till afterwards.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? The second call for public comment. Third and final call for public comment. Seeing no one else, public comment period is now closed. So now we're to the next steps or other discussion.
Okay, I've kind of listened to that beginning presentation, and the city controls land outside the city boundary. And I remember when I was on the city commission, they'd have maps you could only have, and they're out their 4-mile boundary. And the green was for parks and recreation, and this is for development, and the red was for commercial. Number one, you can't tell people what to do with their land. All regulations are actually imposed on the people because they can't vote. And that's a big issue with me. 12,500 people in the ETA can't vote for who's going to impose regulations on them. So there is a solution. Now, this may seem off the wall, but I think it should be considered. We need the departments that are necessary between the county and the city for flood water and the major things, traffic, and et cetera. We need them to be working together, and that'll take care of half the problem right there. The other part of the problem is we have inspectors. We're going to have to decide who's going to inspect what because everything's different. So my recommendation, and like I said, it's going to be off the wall, I think that we should look at getting the departments to work together individually that are really taking care of infrastructure. Once we do that, we should reduce the ETA to 1 foot out of the city boundaries and let the people live the way they want. And you think about that. That doesn't, it makes sense. Because basically I understand that the city, and they have a right to, well, we're going to be annexing, and the county has, like the highway department, well, how's this traffic flow going to be? That can be worked on. Why do we even have an ETA? Is it required? And if it's required, 1 foot's enough for me. That's my comment.
So I'm gonna ask a question because you bring a question up that allows this question to be reasonable. So Mitch, could you come up, please? So Mitch, if you had to take on the ETA area, how many additional staff people would you need?
That's a good question. There are 8 additional zoning districts in the city of Bismarck compared to ours. We'd have to change our complete zoning planning model. It's a good question.
So that my concern would we can negotiate a boundary, but there's another impact to that boundary. I'm just making that clear to everyone, that there would be staffing needed at Burleigh County to handle that additional area, because there's 12,000 or 13,000 residents in the ETA who have needs for that, and just to keep that in perspective as we talk about this, as we move forward. That's all I ask.
You're worried about people, well, the staff to handle that. Well, if we're giving out the permits, we'll be able to. In the first 2 miles, we'll be able to hire help for zoning. I mean, like I said, it's off the wall, but think about it. Think about it.
I think we're going to negotiate something smaller in the ETA regardless. I think there's some definite areas, because I've looked at the map.
I'd like to see it gone anyway,
But there's a cost to the county if this happens, and it's not insignificant.
there's a cost to the city too.
Yeah, I think there'd be a corresponding cost savings to the city.
We still have our boundaries to manage, so, I mean, there might be some, but I don't know it would be corresponding.
I think it would be. I'm part of the ETA thing is a real personal thing to me. I bought my house 38 years ago on 80th Street, and I knew, unlike anybody else, I knew where the line was. And it was the edge of my property was the city's jurisdiction. So I bought land outside of your jurisdiction, and then suddenly I find myself under the city's jurisdiction and nothing I could do about it. I go, that's a problem. So then I wanted to either add on to my garage or do something, a little project. Then I said, well, I guess I got to talk to the city. So I go and talk to the city. I said, well, no, you can't add on to your garage or anything until you do a subdivision plat. I go, well, I'm not a subdivision. I just own this land out here. And that at the time, I think it was estimated somewhere around $12,000 to do this subdivision plat. Because I had on my garage before I could even move a shovel full of dirt. And that's why I got involved and started working with the legislature, and I got appointed as the governor's designee on the Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations, and we worked to change the zoning laws so that we could at least negotiate that 2 to 4. And then there was a change at the city level that staff kind of jokingly referred to it as the Bittner Amendment, so that properties like mine that existed prior to the city's basically grandfathered us in, so I didn't have to have a subdivision plat to add on to my garage. It seems pretty academic, right? And so over time, I just constantly hear, we get phone calls as commissioners all the time from citizens with issues in the ETA. And like I mentioned earlier, the big problem really has been enforcement. Now, besides enforcement, there's also this information that you've received from the county in front of you that talked about stormwater and related problems within the ETA. We know from the timeline that was presented kind of where we're at. But between the Burleigh County Water Resource District and the Burleigh County Highway Department, this particular set of problems has cost us $5,590,000. See, we can't afford your help. We appreciate your desire to be out there regulating that area, but honestly, we can't afford you. We pay more now for their planning and zoning because me and the commissioners at the time, we created our own county planning and zoning. And it's because we terminated you. Your staff was terminated because of these sort of things. So it's hard for me to want to have a lot of cooperation with the city. For example, there's a conversation that came up about a $50,000 thing for public health out of this opioid settlement fund. It doesn't get much traction with me because we're on the hook we're responsible for the repairs out here. a lot of repairs. And you guys get to make you guys allow this to happen without any kind of skin in the game. So I guess my question is, you want to pay us back in a lump sum, or you want to make payments?
So I think before we go down that path, we need to move forward. We need a fix going forward. That's the goal here.
Right.
Looking back is really not going to get us anywhere. And let me finish, please. I think I could pull Mr. Shell up here and Marcus Hall up here, and there's a whole bunch of that $5.5 million that was way pre-storm water management. And
It's the same point, sir.
But how is that the city's fault?
Well, you approved all these subdivisions.
I did not approve them.
This was before your time, but this is why we're here. Because all of this, regardless of the stormwater thing, and we worked hard, we've directed our staffs to work together better to avoid this.
And I believe they are. They are working quite well together.
But look at the value. Look at the cost.
Again, my point is put the timeline to when stormwater management actually started to occur, and that is going to eliminate a significant number of these items, because that was on. Honestly, I don't know who it's on. It's not.
It's on the city planning and zoning.
It wasn't city planning and zoning.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. We didn't have stormwater ordinances then.
That's not an excuse.
Well, Brian, that is. We need to move forward. We need to move forward.
You know, that's part of the issues we've had. Go ahead, Steve.
You can't move forward without looking at the past, because we're not here to approve Einstein's theory of insanity.
As you and others have mentioned, understand that 78% of the taxes Burleigh County collects comes from City of Bismarck residents. So we probably have already contributed to that in a large way.
So how much of that tax goes to the county, and how much does the city collect?
78% of your property tax collections, Burleigh County property tax collections, which Mr. Fields was just talking about it, go to the county. So if the county collects $34 million in property, well, I'll keep the math easier. If the county collects $40 million, $30 million plus is coming from City of Bismarck residents. So we're already contributing to anything the county does.
These are mistakes.
But we're still contributing to that. So you can, if you want to go down the road, and if we were to say that was an actual number,
I want to go down that. I want to go down that road.
Although I don't
we can
believe
do a
that.
little audit and get them numbers.
But again, 78% of the dollars have come from the City of Bismarck property owners. So we have paid for close to 80% of it regardless, as city property owners.
Well, the point Brian brings up is those are mistakes, and they're legitimate mistakes, but what they wind up doing is costing the taxpayers money. Coming back to the ETA, a lot of the concerns that the ETA people are seeing are they're being cost more money from some of the decisions. And that's why we're here, is to try to navigate a path forward so we can mitigate costs to the taxpayers.
Going forward, absolutely.
In the ETA. That's what this discussion is about, so. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of issues, whether it's roads, water conveyance, different things that lie in the ETA, and that's, they're all open for discussion, but, you know, this was more the informational piece, and this is, I think, a good starting place, but there's a lot of things that we still have to look at addressing, so.
So what would be appropriate, I'm sorry, Commissioner Woodcox.
Just as a thought, would there be such a thing as creating a planning and zoning department that handles just the ETA, paid for by a joint combination of city and county funds, and let them handle that, just that area? Is that a thought? Is that something we could pursue? I know that then that one for planning and zoning would eliminate a lot of the, hopefully eliminate a lot of a permit costs $20 here and it costs $200 here and that type of thing. We could move towards a combined regulation of the entire the ETA. Is that such a thing?
I don't know.
I think it's a
Probably-
step,
I hate
I think
to-
it's a step to give them more representation,
We need to look at it.
which is,
I
that could be.
hate to see us grow in government numbers or no employees, because I'm against that too, but there comes a time when maybe this might be an option.
We throw
We
it,
have-
on,
we-
throw
we
it on the
have-
dartboard and see what, or throw it up on the board and see what it brings. Oh,
Mr. Mayor and Chair,
yes.
this is Wayne Munson. I've to kind of go back to Commissioner Woodcox's comment. I've thought about that as well, but I'm not interested in growing larger government to charge the taxpayers more. I do like the idea of what Commissioner Bakken is talking about. This is the informational piece that we got tonight. Now we need to move forward. Even as one of the residents mentioned, we need to make a different time for the next meeting. I feel bad we only had 5 residents come and bring their concerns to us when we have 12,000 people living in the ETA. We need to have another opportunity to hear more of the concerns from the residents so that we can move forward in creating additional guidelines for the two groups to work together so that we can have some good common ground. Thank you.
Commissioner Risch.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I heard some things from Commissioner Bittner, Mr. Jensen about unreasonable rules as far as adding onto a garage. He wants to build a pole barn without concrete. I think those are legitimate issues that should be addressed. We shouldn't be overbearing on the people in the ETA. We should be more lenient and let them do things they want to do. I'm all in on that. But one of the underlying things that I keep hearing is taxation without representation. Funny thing, I have property in Mandan and Morton County. I pay more taxes for the schools in Mandan than I do in Bismarck, and my home is in Bismarck. I pay more taxes for the Park District in Mandan than I do on my home in Bismarck. I just got a special assessment in Mandan for $156,000. And guess what? Guess what? I don't get to vote over there, nor should I be able to vote over there. You can only vote in one place. And the people in the ETA, I love you all, but you do not pay Bismarck City taxes. And a lot of people move outside of the city limits so they don't have to pay city taxes, they don't have to pay Park District taxes and things of that nature. But the people in the ETA, people in Burleigh County, actually get some big advantages that the people of Bismarck pay for. Like I said, I pay $622 a year in Park District fees, or Park District taxes. When I go to Riverwood Golf Course, I pay $40 to play an 18-hole round of golf. If somebody from the ETA of Burleigh County goes to play golf at Riverwood Golf Course, guess what? They pay $40 as well. But I pay twice, because I pay the $622 and I pay my full green fee. So there's an advantage there. You get to go to all our parks, which is great. We want to do that. I go to the wave pool, take my grandchildren there. It's $5. People from the ETA don't pay any Park District taxes, but they get to get in for $5 as well. Our public library is open to everyone in Burleigh County. They don't have to pay anything for a library card. And I've heard the librarian say it's about cost each citizen of Bismarck about $35 a year for this library. So there's a lot of benefits that people in the ETA get that they don't have to pay for. And I think that's an injustice on the citizens of Bismarck.
Except we were just reviewing our preliminary budget last night, and there was a substantial amount in our budget that does go towards city parks, library, and those sort of things. So we actually are,
You're right. The county contributes to several of those.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about
So, let's be clear, it's not just the city residents that are subsidizing the county.
I want to be very clear on this. And that's why I said we should just have this one little strip around the city, and then the county and the city should work together. This will never be resolved, ever, in our lifetime, until these people out here get to vote for who's telling them what to do and who's taxing them. It's not going to work. You would have better luck trying to teach a rock how to swim. Because it's not going to work, and we can sit here and say, well, you get these benefits. The number one benefit is the right to vote, and they don't have it.
Should I be able to vote in Mandan? I live in Bismarck. I have property in Mandan. What?
How many votes can you have? You have
One. Exactly one.
Don't twist my words.
So,
The right to vote is a constitutional right. It's a right every person deserves. And if they can't vote for who's telling them what to do, that is wrong. It's morally wrong, unacceptable, and you'll never get this straightened out until they get the right to vote.
So
I am done commenting.
let's try to find some steps forward, because we're not just throwing barbs back and forth. It's not going to help us.
I'll offer a little bit. What are you worried about? What does the city worry about? I mean, why? The extraterritorial area, I think, was justified at one time. Because back in the 20s and 30s and whatnot, there was no county planning and zoning either. So over time, the city and the county have almost mirror-like ordinances. There's essentially, you saw the presentation, there's basically no difference. And Burleigh County is totally on board with the notion of trying to protect the airport. We fly out of the same thing, City owns the land around it. Now, I don't know what that means in your mind to protect the airport, because we would have the same interest. So what I'm asking is, what are you afraid of? This thing has outlived its usefulness. We're way beyond the 20s and 30s, because we have county planning and zoning. We established that. And so, we're prepared to work together. I've been on the City Planning and Zoning Commission for like 17 years. Nobody has been on that board that's currently on it longer than I have. And the place is not a train wreck or anything. I haven't proposed anything outlandish. We've been cooperative, and I think the city would have a lot better cooperation from the county if you eliminate this ETA. We'll work together. We'll guarantee none of us here want to see the city of Bismarck have problems. But conversely, I showed you a list of the problems we face. So I guess the question is, what are you afraid of?
Well, I believe if we go back to the reason why ETA was established, now again, the area, I'm not going to say that the area that's currently defined is the right geographic square mile area, but the ETA was established to provide the cities, not just City of Bismarck, it's cities, a way to manage the growth. Now, does it need to be restricted? Potentially. That's why it isn't what's under Century Code right now. That's really why it isn't that way. And we're trying to negotiate potentially something better. So I'm not saying that we're afraid of anything. I just think we need to get to what is a reasonable geographic definition, 1 foot around the city. Like, we're going to be annexing county property every other day, and that's not an easy process to go through when you've got a planning and zoning that's under our jurisdiction. That becomes a burden.
There's no problem. There's no problem with that. You annex the property, it becomes in the city limits, and you got it.
But
These look at here. All of these subdivisions around the outside here, how does that protect your growth area? That doesn't, there's you guys over the years have approved subdivisions everywhere in your own way. And now you're trying to say you're protecting your growth. You've been hurting your growth. We want to work together. We want to work together with the city.
One of the things that needs to be a part of the discussion is, for the growth of Bismarck, what happens when the city has to annex a 2.5 acre lot? I mean, great example was the gal down south that she had one house on a parcel that was hers, and she wound up getting assessed times 6. That's where I think a lot of the conversations at this table need to also go is, for the future growth of Bismarck, how do you manage that? Because you're not going to be able to go somebody who's got a 5-acre lot and go, hey, we're the city, you're now part of the city, and you're getting assessed times 12 for, I mean, so those are some of the discussions that we need to have at this table as well, because you're going to tax somebody out of their property at some point, if that happens. And those are some of the things we need to look at addressing, because nobody doesn't want the city to grow. The city has to grow.
Not disagreeing with that. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
But, so those are some of the other discussions that we need to have.
There's some mathematical
Yeah.
way to get to this without being 1 foot around the city. There's just something, there's going to be a negotiated, and there's going to be compromise. And not everybody's going to be unhappy to some point, and everybody's going to be happy to some point. That's what negotiation is. So I would like to know what our next steps forward would be so that we can begin to move in a process forward. Do we want to schedule another meeting of the entirety of us? Do we want to have a subset of that to try to work with some ideas to bring back? Because putting 10 people around the table sometimes gets hard to get those.
It gets cumbersome.
Get those deals done.
So
I would advise you that, like I said, if I was going to try to figure this thing out, the first thing you need to work on is these people's right to vote. It is not going to work, and that's the most important issue here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Has anybody, do we know, or our planning departments are here, do anybody know of other cities that, they all have the same problem, because you get that, can't vote for who represents you in the city. Are there other cities that have solved that problem?
I was gonna ask the same thing, Ben. You say in your presentation that every city in North Dakota over 5,000 people has an ETA. Are there any of those cities, I mean, I don't expect you to know offhand. Are there any cities offhand where those people, the residents in the ETA, vote for their city representation? Is that a
Mayor, Chair,
thing anywhere?
members of the commission, I'm not aware that that's allowable. I've not heard anybody else doing that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, at one point, the counties and the cities had districts where you ran for the Northwest District 22 and I ran for the one in Northeast, and then you would have that problem solved, because people in the ETA would have a district to vote for their representatives in that problem. But that's a real long process that takes a lot of difficult decisions, and tough way to go. But it is a solution to providing representation for your district.
Yeah. Ben, since you're up, I guess while I'm listening.
I should sit down right away and try to speak.
Yeah, that's your loss.
Don't hang in there. You hang in there.
While these gentlemen were all speaking, I was just looking at your presentation and this map that's in front of me, and I guess if we're going to be meeting again and having the conversation, because it does sound like there's some appetite of like eliminating or shrinking the section of the ETA while we continue to have the conversation of what the representation looks like. On the last slide of your, for your projected population, I guess I would just like to, if we can steer the conversation, whether it's next time or what, to what minimizing the ETA looks like to the actual plan for growth. I know there was like one gentleman up here, I believe it was Daniel, but was talking about living in the Faulkner Edition, and that there's probably no intention that that would ever end up in Bismarck. So then why is it in the ETA? I guess I would like to have some of those questions answered. Like, would it be reasonable for it to be smaller if in the next 20 years we're only touching
From staff's
parts of it?
perspective, this question was actually asked in 2023 when we were going through this with the joint Bismarck-Burleigh Council. And yeah, staff from Bismarck are open to, if there are established rural subdivisions that we are not anticipating urbanizing into, we're open to having that discussion to modifying the boundary, to removing some of those. But the caveat is, I think we'd want representatives from the airport here for the airport's protection as well. because they've found benefit in those properties, some of those properties being within the ETA because they know it's within the city's control, and FAA actually appreciates that as well. So, yeah.
Sure, I mean,
But long
yeah.
story short, yes, we
I'm
would be
aware
open
that
to
those
reducing
conversations
those.
probably all need
Yeah.
to happen, but I think just from a like ETA residential perspective, I can imagine that the farther out you are away from the city limits and the farther you are to that like boundary of the ETA, it probably gets even more frustrating to have to abide by the rules that maybe don't make sense for your acreage or whatever. So I guess if we're not going to be growing into certain areas, I'd like to at least look at what it looks like to eliminate parts of the ETA. I think is a starting point at least.
Yeah, if I understand your question, maybe looking at areas that we aren't anticipating providing urban services to anytime in the foreseeable
That we're
future.
not anticipating growth within that 2045.
Sure.
Yeah, would be where I would like to start.
Commissioner Conley.
A lot of the taxation without representation, that's part of the reason why I bring up the greenfield assessments and things. And I think a lot of that gets taken care of if we grandfather new properties in by eliminating the look back on the greenfield. Because I did have a discussion with department heads, and part of it is, well, they're benefiting from the services. At the same time, like Commissioner Bittner said, he's lived out there a long time, and now the community's encroaching on him. More traffic's encroaching on him. Probably perfectly fine with 3 or 5 people using the gravel road, but now if you're adding hundreds of cars, gravel's not practical anymore. Should those people that were perfectly fine with gravel roads be assessed for more traffic that came to them? They didn't encroach on the city, so to speak. And that would take care of some of that taxation without representation conversation.
You know, some of it too, it's like there's areas that don't need curb and gutter. You know, development that was put out there that is, the water conveyance is perfectly fine, and what does that look like? You know, at some point that goes into the city, and then they wind up getting assessed with curb and gutter and the water and sewer. Well, do you need the curb and gutter? You have the water conveyance. You've got some of the other pieces that are just perfectly fine for that development. You know, county garbage trucks, private garbage trucks drive on those roads just fine and don't have issues. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts on people becoming residents of Bismarck without getting them overly taxed and overly burdened with assessments, and that's part of the discussion as well.
So again.
So, Commissioner Cleary, I think, is a great point. If we can bring some of that back, address the map and what that looks like, really have a conversation about shrinking down the ETA and getting it where the city's comfortable with what we're doing and we're comfortable with what the city's doing. I mean, Ben ran through the list. It's almost identical. There's some things that people need to be able to do out in their property if they're putting up a pole barn. I certainly don't need engineering for a pole barn. I don't need concrete in a pole barn if I'm just parking my boat and my tractor in it. Those are some of the discussions we need to have, and I think that's probably discussions for the next meeting.
So do we want to try to schedule one for all of us, or do we want to have a working group first?
Why don't we do the working group? I think part of that discussion is at the joint meeting, at our next one. We can do a follow-up there. I would like to do either an opportunity on the city commission or the county commission, if we can't get together as a group, to at least maybe set aside as part of an agenda item for public comment for people that live in the ETA to be able to speak to both commissions.
We can get that on our
So I
agenda.
think that would be good for a good opportunity for compromise for people that do work past 5 o'clock or near 5 o'clock.
I don't see any
So,
problem with that on our agenda.
Yeah, and then
As an agenda item.
Yeah,
specific.
as an agenda item, and then we can bring that back for our joint meeting and further this discussion there.
Yep, okay. Is there any other discussion at this point in time? Not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.